Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Experience Kills. I'm your host Ben, and with me today we have Richard.
I am here again.
Again, like the Renegade Master.
I'm not like the Renegade Master. I'm far cooler than that.
That's a good point. That's a very, very good point. Today we are looking at something I think both of us first saw, not at this year's E3, but the previous year's E3. And this is another game from the EA Originals. Now, before you all start booing and before you all start shouting at your screen about loot boxes, or what did they call them, chance mechanics or something recently? I don't know, something stupid. EA Originals has actually put out some pretty cool little sort of smaller, more personal games that we might not have got without it. So we got A Way Out, we got Faye, and now we've got, you know, Sea of Solitude, or SOS. I think they knew they were doing that, don't they? SOS.
I hope they did.
Yeah, if they didn't, I'm pretty sure they did. Someone, probably EA, came up with that. I bet you that's an EA thing. And I don't personally hate on EA as much as some people. I think they sometimes say really stupid things, but they also put out, from time to time, really interesting games. And this is one of them. Now, Richard, what do you know about Sea of Solitude?
Not a great deal, beyond being quite excited for how it appeared when we saw it at E3 last year. It's got a distinctive style. It's kind of like a anime sort of style, isn't it? Although it's not cel shaded at all, but
almost. It's almost cel shaded, isn't it?
Almost, but yeah. But the build of the characters and how their faces look, it looks like an anime in that way.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's stunning to look at. A lot of this game is spent on the water, as it were, and the environments can be quite simplistic, but they're also very evocative. And the idea is that you do have a sense of loneliness in these quite stark vistas, but there is a beauty to them, especially with the way in which sometimes they'll be monochromatic, sometimes the weather will be really dark and oppressive, and then it will be lit up and clear up and just have these beautiful sunsets and gorgeous lighting, and it looks fantastic on the Xbox One X I'm playing it on. Yeah, I can't fault the visual style of Sea of Solitude, but I think it's important we get to we'll talk about the main themes first before I talk about the things I don't like as much. Now, Sea of Solitude, it basically comes up with a warning / explanation text right at the beginning of the game. This deals with mental health issues, depression, loneliness, anxiety, things like that are the themes that are being discussed by this game, by this small sort of studio called Jome, which I believe are from Germany, or at least parts of the team are Germany, but they're definitely European. And it feels very personal, and it feels very much like the story of the characters in this game is coming from a place of real experiences. And because of that, you have to respect it. You have to approach it from a sense of, whoa, okay, this is heavy jelly. And to start with, I was kind of left a bit cold by the experience. It's not the first time we've experienced video games now which deal with mental health issues and try to look at them through the prism of video games, through interactivity, through visual representation. You know, I was talking about the beauty and the starkness and the monochromatic. Those sort of metaphors aren't new now. Mm-hmm. And it took a little while, but after a few hours of playing, it started to click with me, mostly because there was a particular story in here focusing on a character. I don't want to spoil anything because the game is very experiential, so I'm talking about it in sort of general terms, which really resonated with me. And I think this is the kind of game where most people will find at least one element of it something they can relate to, and when they get to that bit, you're going to be kind of floored because it speaks to you. The problem of Sea of Solitude is the gameplay, as is often the case in games that are trying to address such heady issues as this, such difficult emotional issues. The actual third person jumping around, collecting shit gameplay isn't particularly interesting, which is a real shame when it looks as good as it does, when it deals with such subject matter as it does, that it kind of feels like a bit of a chore to actually... I mean, there are straight up collectibles. There are these pigeons you can find... Oh no, they're not pigeons, they're seagulls, sorry, which you can find and shoo them away, and then it comes up with 5 of 30-something, 6 of 30-something.
That's a peculiar choice, isn't it? Isn't that odd?
Yeah, very strange. And then there are these bottles which have little messages in them, but they're kind of telling a story, a little bit of a side story, which I'm sure will amount to something. But again, it comes up 6 of 40, 7 of 40, 8 of 40, encouraging you to kind of poke around the environments, I suppose. Just because I think what it is that they've built these environments and they've probably playtested it and realised, well, people aren't looking around them. We've put all this work in, and they're not actually putting any effort into exploring the environments because they're just going point to point.
There are ways of doing that, though. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Journey, which had... I can't... Well, you can explain to me a bit better how the gameplay in this works, maybe. But in Journey, it feels as if that's a cipher for what this is doing, in that it's a 3D experience. It plays on emotions, and although there is some exploration involved, it doesn't go out of its way to force you to unlock areas of a map or anything explicit like that. It is about the joy of discovery and the feelings along the way. So if this is going for that sort of vibe, it seems a bit clumsy to have lists of pickups and how many out of 30 you've picked up along the way. Seems a bit clumsy and not in keeping with the vibe.
It's heavy-handed, and I think it does feel like it was an artificial creation to justify the type of game that's been created here. You have this mechanic which is the flare, and you can launch a flare out of your hand, a light flare, which will show you the direction you need to head into your next various objectives. Now, this could be to get to another monster, this could be to find a thing, this could be to take away the corruption from an area, various things, but that will always point you in the right direction. So they've added that mechanic, probably because the worlds without direction were confusing for players and they didn't know where to go or what to do. So they added that mechanic, but then they've gone back, it feels like, and gone, well, we need to tell people that it's okay to explore as well, so here are some collectibles to incentivize that. And it just detracts from the whole kind of emotional impact of the game, which are the monsters, which are these metaphors, these giant, towering, black, terrifying metaphors for various aspects of the character's mental health. And not actually just the main character, but side characters that are connected to her as well. And they are powerful, and they are terrifying and oppressive, and they do such a great job of getting those sort of problems across to people in ways which you can understand if you've never even experienced them yourself. And I really respect that.
How does that play out then? Because if the collectibles are a bit heavy-handed, then my worry would be that the monsters are as well. They certainly sound as if they're overblown because they're monsters. So is it like you'll find a monster called Anxiety and he's like, hello, I'm Anxiety, press X to relieve your anxiety? It's not like that, is it?
Shouldn't laugh about that. You've made me laugh about something horrible there. Shouldn't. But no, it's not. It's actually, like, the writing is incredibly well done. The voice acting, at first, again, I was a bit put off by the voice acting because it was a non-English speaker speaking in English with a heavy European accent. But then I realised as you progress through the game, there's actually a lot of different accents. There's a lot of different nationalities on display here. Everything from English to European to American, and it's more inclusive. It's trying to show these things affect everyone, I think, is what it's trying to do. Feeling, global and inclusive.
Really capturing the zeitgeist there.
Well, I think Joe May and EA Originals are doing something quite kind of cool and brave with that sort of casting. I think that was pretty awesome of them. But
I'm not going to knock that, actually. That is cool.
Yeah, the monsters, so they don't ever spell it out like that, and part of the gameplay is actually sort of, you get to the different levels and you meet these different monsters, and it kind of that's how the gameplay progresses, and it's all about investigating what kind of aspect that is. And it's not as much so much as, you know, you're picking up stuff, but, you know, as you progress, you'll get a little tip and a little indicator, a little bit more narrative, a little bit more character that will show you more clearly what the problem is we're facing and what this monster represents. And it's never completely obvious from the moment you first meet them what they are meant to be, but you start to get to know the characters and the flaws of the character, and it becomes kind of it sort of slowly unveils this wider narrative about what's happened in her past and what's brought her to this moment, and the problems she's had, her insecurities, and her failings as a human being, as a sister and as a daughter, you know, and the family that she's had and the effect it's had on her. And it brings in lots of elements that, like I said earlier, you're going to have at least one moment where you go, shit, yeah, totally. I've been there. I get it. Like, I really think they've done an incredible job of, like, showing how everybody has maybe a little experience with some of these issues that you could consider having an effect on your mental health. That this mental health problems are this huge thing that affects way more people than anybody wants to admit. And I think it's incredibly brave and it's incredibly touching and emotional in that regard. And it's just such a shame that the kind of moment-to-moment gameplay, just the jumping around, the platforming, the very light puzzle solving, it all feels unnecessary.
What's the balance of that? Is there too much of the platformy bits?
Oh yeah, I think so. The going around in your boat, right? The going around in your boat feels great. Boat handles really well. It works as this metaphor for, you know, you're lost in this ocean of self. You don't really know who you are, why you're there. It's all about discovery. It's all about traveling, and it's all about going deeper into the psyche of the character, and that feels beautiful, and it feels great, and it looks great. I wish there'd been more of that. There is still a lot of that, but then you get off the boat and then you're clumsily jumping around on rooftops because it's this flooded world and trying to avoid the water. There's this one monster that tracks you throughout, that's always in the water and will kill you if it gets to you before you get out of the water. So it's this constant threat, and part of the story is discovering what that is about, you know, what that represents. So I won't spoil anything, but that actually is quite scary when you have to get out of the boat. But it's the traipsing around on rooftops and climbing ladders, and sort of just jumping about, and the world doesn't feel very well designed. That these rooftops sometimes feel overly maze-like for no real reason. It's just a bit yeah, could have done with a few more passes. I imagine there's a reason for it. It probably represents something as well. And if you dig deep enough, I'm sure in a game like this you could come up with something. But from a gameplay point of view, I just felt like it was a bit too much of a barrier. For, you know, what's being told here, I think it's not like I could say it would work better as a book or a comic or a film. I do think it works very well as a game. However, I just think a little bit more editing, a little bit more tightening up of the experiences would have made it that much more powerful.
Yeah, I suppose we're used to games like this not quite being games.
Yeah.
You know? So, I forgive experiences that. It doesn't have to be about being necessarily an overtly interactive experience. All the stuff about platforming and picking stuff up, they are tropes of, you know, video games that we're all used to, and it makes you feel like I suppose you're getting your money's worth, aren't you, if those sorts of things are included. But if you're buying a game specifically because it addresses these issues and that detracts from it, it's almost worth cutting back on the interactive side of it and making it more of a told experience rather than giving the player the idea that they are in control of this, because they shouldn't be, really. It should be about telling the story.
Yeah, no, that's the point. And I don't think well, put it this way, I'd be very surprised if anybody who just bought this game, they saw a trailer and thought, oh yeah, that platforming, that kind of action, that's my jam, I'm gonna get that, and they didn't pick this game up knowing it was this experience which is, you know, trying to tell a very personal and emotional and quite upsetting story with many different facets to it. And maybe people do that. I really don't know, but I think if that person, if you did do that, you'd be disappointed, because it doesn't work on that level. And if it's the inverse, if all you think is that this is some kind of told experience that's gonna be incredibly emotional, and then you find all this platform, it doesn't work on that level either. So I think there's a little bit of trying to have their cake and eat it here. There is definitely a lot of ambition on display here from Joe May when it comes to just the size of the world, the scope of it. You know, again, not a massive team. Obviously, the EA support and stuff has helped them get this game produced. But even then, I think it's great to see, you know, video games now got to that point where I can say, oh, I've seen stuff dealing with these kind of anxiety and depression issues before in video games, you know, and I'm not sure this is the best iteration of it. I mean, that's crazy, man. In 2019, we can actually say that about video games, and that makes me super happy. And it also excites me that I'm seeing a game here that's clearly a passion project, a personal project that's telling a very, this one art house cinema-esque, you know, story that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily see at your Cineplex, but I'm getting it here on my Xbox One, and from EA of all people, and that's brilliant. So I can't fault them for that, and I think there's a lot more positive here than negative. I think you're going to be moved to tears playing this game. It's incredibly emotional, and I really do like the way the monsters work as this allegory and metaphor for all these different mental health issues that this character has experienced. I'm just not sure the padding in the middle was necessary and could have been just reduced, just tightened up.
Yeah, shame that. I suppose it's that's a sign that it's from a big publisher like EA, isn't it? Where I don't know how much influence they would have had, but you get the impression that they might have asked for something that was a bit more rounded as a traditional game. And if this had come out as an indie product, maybe it would be more focused along the lines that you're saying it should be.
But conversely, you don't know if it'd be more focused purely because of a lack of resources, or if this is exactly what the developer wanted to make. Do you know what I mean?
But it sounds like I'd be interested to try it out.
Is it feature creep?
Maybe, yeah. But yeah, from what you've said of the good elements, it's certainly something I'd want to try.
Oh, I think it's an important game, and I think especially a game like this coming from a big publisher, I think that says a lot about where the industry's going and what kind of games and the kind of experiences we're starting to get now from these, you know, as the publishers realise, oh, not every game has to be either an open world Lara Croft style or Horizon Zero Dawn style game, or a Ubisoft open world game, or a first person shooter. We can get a lot of variety of games that tell very personal, mature, upsetting stories. Not everything has to have those exciting, you know, over the top positive moments, and I think that's brilliant for the industry. And this is, like I said, it's worth checking out. I really think it's worth checking out. It is part of EA Access, I believe, and it does have a trial on that on Xbox, so you can try the game out if you have EA Access, or pick up EA Access for a few quid for a month, so you can give it a go and see if it's for you. And I do recommend people do that. Basically, you have to pay for a demo if you like, and that kind of sucks, but it's better than nothing. And if you want to just go for it, I think it's well worth looking at. So well done to Joe May, and once again, well done to EA with the Originals program. I think they're putting stuff out there, you know? I love that they're putting stuff out there. That's super cool.
It is cool. I'm glad they're still doing it. So yeah, I will seek this one out at some point, I'm sure.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Experience Kills. A really touching experience here of Solitude, guys. I do recommend everybody checks it out if they can. I really do. We'll be back soon with more videos. I can guarantee that, even though it's the summer, stuff is coming out thick and fast. Especially interesting, weird little things, you know, like Sea of Solitude that are pushing the boundaries in various ways. We can be found on Twitter at Experience Kills. You've probably just watched this on YouTube, so please like and subscribe. And if you haven't already realised, if you don't have time to watch the video on YouTube, you can also subscribe to us via audio-only feed. So Spotify, iTunes, and a dedicated RSS feed, all of which can be found in the video description. You can find me at DIYE on Twitter. Richard, where can they find you?
Look for me on Twitter at Colonel Red.
I thank you for joining me for another exciting episode, Rich, and thank you all our listeners and people watching this for joining us as well. We'll be back very, very soon.
Thank you very
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.